I don't know whether, like me, you're watching Trump's speech in the Knesset and the sense of gloating by Trump over the peace settlement that is frankly far from established or sealed. We might love the concept of Israel, but we cannot we cannot accept, I don't think, it's difficult to accept the manifestation of government in Israel. We cannot love that manifestation of government in Israel, a government that's failed to maintain security, and on whose watch the worst terror offence took place 2 years ago, and a government that has pursued collective punishment on the Gazans and her hideous siege for 2 years, violating international standards and committing genocide in the process. I cannot see that there's anything to celebrate and to love about that. But the concept of Israel, yes, together with the concept of a two-state solution and the celebration of a Palestinian nation recognized by the majority of the UN, yes, that is something to celebrate. Trump's words are casual and ill-considered even if they receive applause, but monkeys used to get applause when they performed on a music organ on the street corner. No great achievement to get the clap. Now, to the analysis, Trump's Knesset speech was meticulously staged to declare the historic dawn of a new Middle East, to pronounce the war is over and to bask in chants of his name while praising Netanyahu and his own envoys. He even floated a soon-to-be-formed board of peace. The symbolism was thick, the substance thinner. The speech was interrupted by opposition MKs waving recognize Palestine placards, which was telling. The applause line ran one way, the political reality ran the other. What has actually happened today is narrower and more conditional than the rhetoric suggests. Hamas has released the last 20 living Israeli hostages to the Red Cross for transfer to Israel, and in return, Israel is freeing roughly 1,900 Palestinian detainees, including 250 serving life sentences, and is due to return the remains of 28 deceased Israeli hostages, or is due to receive the remains. The exchange is the first step in a larger 20-point framework. It's not a final settlement. It rests on continued compliance, enforcement by mediators, and subsequent agreements on the most difficult files: disarmament, governance, borders, and a credible end to occupation. The human ledger here is sobering. The 7th of October 2023 atrocities killed around 1,200 people in Israel and led to mass hostage-taking. Israel's subsequent 2-year campaign devastated Gaza, with reported Palestinian deaths exceeding 67,000, and the vast majority of the population displaced. Civilians in their thousands slaughtered and attacked. These are the stakes against which triumphalism looks indecent. The political theatre in Jerusalem had 3 layers. First, the domestic shield for Netanyahu. From the podium, he lauded Trump as Israel's greatest friend, wrapped the day in civil religion, and tried to convert the exchange into vindication of his leadership. It doubles as cover for those who blame his government both for the 2023 security failure and for prosecuting a war whose tactics brought international censure and ICC attention. The heckling and the ejections in the chamber underlined how contested that narrative remains. Second, the American self-branding. Trump has tied his name to the exchange, promised a board of peace, and suggested the weapons delivery creating the conditions for peace. He cast US strikes on Iranian nuclear sites in June as the fog-clearing move that made this possible. This is classic Trumpian pageantry. Claim authorship, attribute inevitability, and move quickly to the victory lap optics in Israel and the summit photo in Sharm el-Sheikh. None of that answers the core questions of durability. Third, the regional hinge. The Sharm summit can only succeed if it addresses the unresolved items: a phased Israeli withdrawal, an enforceable path to Hamas disarmament and decommissioning, credible and legitimate governance of Gaza, and an economic package for reconstruction in the $50 billion range. The mediators, Egypt, Qatar, and Turkey, can pressure, but the architecture that matters is recognition, security guarantees, and money. On law and accountability, the I think one needs to be blunt. Two things can be true at once. The freeing of hostages and prisoners is a relief, but there's a long record of conduct that will be litigated in courts of law and courts of history. South Africa's UN submissions assert genocidal conduct. Major human rights and academic studies document systemic civilian harm and astonishing abuse. Even if one disputes legal characterizations, collective punishment and siege tactics fell foul of the standards that liberal democracies claim to uphold, and that is why celebrations jar. So, I think it's important to ask, how should a serious observer read today? This is a fragile breathing space, not peace. The exchange reduces a casus belli and gives families back their loved ones, but it leaves intact the structural drivers of conflict. The test is phase 2. If the parties cannot sequence withdrawal, security and governance, the ceasefire will relapse into skirmishes or worse. Benchmarks should be public, verifiable weapons control inside Gaza, a transitional security mechanism that is not a proxy militia, and a strict humanitarian surge to stabilise public health, water and food. The only sustainable horizon is 2 states. Trump's script nodded to the Abraham Accords and to normalisation, but normalisation without Palestinian sovereignty has proved brittle. If the Sham track does not couple Gaza's stabilisation to a real political process, borders, settlements, Jerusalem rights, it will be another hallway with no door. And finally, language matters. Declaring the war is over before mechanisms exist to keep it over risks incentivising spoilers. It also erodes trust when promised bodies are not returned on schedule or when parties hedge. Prudence beats pageantry. What accounts as a genuine progress in the next 90 days? That's a good question. A published timetable with third-party monitoring for IDF withdrawal, drawdown zones, a no-go list of prohibited operations, an interim Gaza authority with an agreed mandate, audited financing and a path to elections that is not indefinitely deterred, a donor compact that front-loads demining, rubble clearance, hospitals and schools, and that ring-fences funds from political capture, parallel talks on West Bank settlements, detainees and movement permit regimes, because siloing Gaza guarantees failure. And a final word on tone. Applause is cheap. And, as I say, street organs once drew crowds. Statesmanship requires restraint. Israel's families deserve quiet dignity and care. Palestinian families deserve the same. If this moment catalyses a rules-based path to a Palestinian state alongside Israel, then it is a turning point. If it is merely a victory rally, history will treat this as a pause before the next calamity. Celebrate lives saved, yes, but reserve the laurels. Peace is not proclaimed from a rostrum. It is built in the hard grammar of verifiable steps, lawful conduct, and the political courage to say what Trump did not say in the Knesset: statehood for Palestinians alongside security for Israelis, or there is no peace at all.